Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So that's the first bit sorted. Once you can get mute to not to work properly, then you're on a go. Okay. So as Joan has said, I spent not the whole summer, but part of the summer in the AL common room. So this is a slide about myself. Okay. That's me in the corner there. I think on the opposite side of the shard, and that's about a year ago. Okay, that's my full name, Oladapo Fadoju. I prefer to be called Ola because if you call me Oladapo, that means I'm in big trouble. Only my grandmama, my mum called me those my full name. 51 years of age. I am getting old. I've been told that by my sons, but now my wife is saying it. So I am definitely getting old. An associate lecturer on sports and fitness modules since 2010, and I'm also an EDI champion in Wales. Just a fun fact, actually. I was born 5 days after the Open University was established. So I am as old as the Open University. Another fact is actually Baroness Jenny Lee, who was, one of the main people behind the OU. Actually, I worked in her building. So I was working with IET at the time for about 3 to 4 years. So I do have a very close affinity to the OU in that terms. So I'm going to move on to the next slide and talk more about what happened while I was in the Associate Learners Common Room. Okay, so that's the slide just about data. Okay, this has been produced by the OU, and as you can see there, it is actually been broken down specifically by the ethnicity. I've just put a few arrows across so you can just see that's the FAST, the FBL, STEMA, Wales, and the PPC students. Yeah, I do apologize for the poor screenshot, but that's where we are in terms of so you can see the numbers, how limited they are. Okay, quite limited, the numbers in terms of how we are in increasing the diversity of the population in terms of staff, especially ALs at the OU. Okay. So, main key points that were discussed in the OU Common Room. Okay, so signposting of areas of BAME activities and networks across the OU. There were discussions of best practices from other institutions that could be adopted at the OU. Honest reflections from non-BAME ALs, the experiences of BAME ALs, how we as ALs can help reduce the ethnicity attainment gap. But actually, when you listen to Jenny Douglas this afternoon, she's now saying actually it's the awarding gap on the modules that we lecture on. And what can we do as an AL community to reassure that BAME ALs, that the OU is actually open? And that was a point that Tim has also mentioned, just our Vice Chancellor mentioned a few minutes ago, and that equity isn't a checkbox measure. So there were negative views from the ALs on the points below. They were disconcerting, and quite frankly, at some stage I was thinking, am I in a script, or am I in the Mind Your Language or Love Thy Neighbor TV show back from the 70s? If you're as old as I am and you remember them, you would know what I'm talking about, how negative some of the comments were, the stereotypical views of some of my, when I say my peers, my ALs, my colleagues. But however, the majority of the posts from the ALs does indicate that we are moving in the right direction. Okay, so those key points, as you can see, those 2 pointers below, there were posts from ALs that just didn't sit well, there was a lack of understanding, there was ignorance, which you wouldn't expect from an academic community. Yeah, I didn't expect it. That could be my naivety, but I did not expect to read some of the posts that came through the online forum. And consequently, there were one official complaint was put in by an AL, and that triggered the review of the Associate Lecturers Common Room. So there has been a review that has been ongoing, which has finished, and hopefully will soon be published. So that's a positive point as well that came out from me being involved in the AL Common Room and actually using Let's Talk About Race as a thread. Okay, so based on SAS, Amar's points that he mentioned earlier, we, Joan and I, because Joan Simmons really helped in supporting me in actually going through this process of producing the slides and also talking about how we would have this discussion, and also supporting me actually through the time when the comments were coming through the the AL Common Room. So we looked at, so what don't we know? So yeah, what we don't know, okay? What we don't know. And that's the not so good. We don't know how many ALs hold these unacceptable views. We don't know how to change those views. We don't know what the impact that those unacceptable views have on our students. How does it influence tutorials, the forums, even assessments? We do not fully know the impact of what those views are on our AL colleagues as well. There were numerous examples of offensive posts without the author appreciating that they were offensive. Below, there was a long, unpleasant thread that focused on objecting to the suggestion that there was a need to acknowledge that race is an important issue and the need to increase the number of students and staff from a BAME background, specifically stating that race is irrelevant. Persistently negative and unacceptable views which were counter to the OU mission were expressed mainly by one AL. However, many other ALs objected to and challenged. The moderator intervened and some posts were deleted, but again, when the moderators intervened, they only intervened after I had intervened, and that caused another issue as well. So I and myself and the moderators had to have a discussion outside the forum about how I felt that they were not moderating the forum effectively, which led to another discussion with one of the I think it's the AL. One of the senior managers of the Associate Lecturers Department, Tasmin Wister, and I had to have a discussion with her about how I felt the moderators needed to be trained more effectively to deal with issues regarding race when they come up, and I don't think that they were. The stereotype view that has been dismissed countless of times was expressed and supported in the forum, that the disparities between white and BAME ethnicities can be attributed, for example, to poverty, diet, and genetics. You know, I'm going to use a word that I used when I actually did respond as well. That it was mind-boggling to see those views being attributed to academic people who I worked with. And when ALs were questioned, they stood by their post and objected to the questioning, saying that they were not being confrontational. In relation to the need for safe spaces, and actually at one stage, the BAME ALs who were on the forum actually had to remove themselves because they said, I do not feel safe. And one response from an AL was, well, it's what makes you think it's not safe? Why does it have to be a safe space? What do you mean by a safe space? You know, but again, this is not to suggest that they weren't counter that. Sometimes some ALs were countering some of these posts as well. So what do we know? So what we know, okay, which is the good part. So ALs gave examples of previously working in diverse teams where everybody works in harmony. There were posts from ALs who countered the unacceptable posts, were reasoned and respectful in their words, and supportive of the need for discussion. The need for protected characteristics irrespective was stated. The legal approach to deal with discrimination. There was a post about the discussion on the removal of statues. An AL expressed the satisfaction of the statue of Edward Colston, which was the slave owner in Bristol, being thrown into the water. One post called on white colleagues to challenge racism when they came across it. There were helpful resources being shared, such as the APP, and as well as authors who had written on the experiences of racism. It was pointed out, it was signposted that there is a BAME network at the OU. Okay, there was a call to acknowledge why safe spaces are needed and supporting colleagues to have them. There was a view that the university was working to right the wrongs of the past and trying to address the imbalances of BAME colleagues' representation. There is one quote there which I'm going to speak about later on a bit more, which was, there was a quote, and this is the only quote we've actually pulled out because we didn't want to use quotes and more to keep it to kind of summary and paraphrasing, which is we haven't done well enough and we need to do better. Okay, we need to do better. At the start of the thread, there was a lot of engagement, and there were several ALs who appreciated it and saying this is really good that this thread had been started. So that was a very good point to see. Okay. So the challenges, what we need to know. There's a very telling post suggested that ALs can't do anything about our awarding gap as we do not know the ethnicity of our students, suggesting that the issues with our students are not our curriculum or lack of representation. And again, this has been covered in very depth and breadth by Jenny Douglas and Marcia earlier on today. One post acknowledged that there was a BAME awarding gap, but felt it couldn't be tackled at university level. So which level would it be tackled at? We need to know how ALs have successfully addressed the support needs of students from a BAME background and then promote those examples of good practice. The statistics on the number of BAME students and staff, as well as national figures, were cited incorrectly. So there's need for greater clarity and knowledge and resources so that colleagues have the support they need to correct this information. There was an acceptance that ALs are role models and students learn from them in relation to how they communicate as well as the topic being discussed. This reinforces the need for ALs to be trained in the issues of racial equity and effective strategies needed to address the BAME awarding gap. And again, Marcia and Jenny have touched on role models, and Tim actually mentioned it as well. Acknowledgement that students from BAME backgrounds may come into the OU with negative experiences from previous white educators. There was a view that it's easy for a person to ignore the importance of race if all your teachers have been white. Essentially, largely proportion of our students are white, which means there are views and experiences missing from other ethnicities. So we need to look at that. Some posts demonstrated a lack of understanding of anonymous recruitment. And again, that's something that Tim also pulled up earlier. There was a very big lack of understanding of why should you have anonymous recruitment? There was a lack of understanding. More challenges. So the moderators, as I mentioned earlier, they did try to intervene. They did post on the forum. However, I felt they need more support to deal with issues of race and non-acceptable posts in the forum. I really do feel that essentially was a key thing for me, that they just didn't have the knowledge, the understanding of how to deal with the issues, and hence why some of the posts just kept on going through without them being challenged by the moderators. All colleagues need to be able to speak out freely with good intentions. without worrying about being criticized. I think that is essential because it does bring that step towards race equality. There has to be a safe space for BAME staff to be able to talk to each other without having to engage with discussion. We shouldn't just have to talk about racism just because we're BAME staff. We should be able to talk about anything. We shouldn't, it shouldn't just be about race. There has to be more ALs employed from a BAME background. I'm going to state something. Again, I don't yet have a full confirmation of those stats. I have been as I said, an AL in the sports and fitness team since 2010. I don't think we're more than 5 BAME ALs within the sports and fitness team. I don't think. I do know there's no BAME academic staff within the OU in that department. There used to be, but she left, and there's no reason why she left apart from she got another job. But that's the issue. So I was wondering while I was having this discussion with Joan and the rest of the BAME network group in our groups, and also when I was within the AL forum, to say why is that? What's the disparity? I've lectured outside the OU in other universities as guest lecturers. There are multitude of BAME sports and fitness students who have become, who have gone on to get masters. Some of them have gone to get PGCEs, teaching qualifications. Why are they not coming to the OU to work? Is there a lack of knowledge or understanding of it? Is it myself? Could I have promoted the OU more? I used to mentor and coach a lot of young boys. All of them are now in their mid-30s, but I don't think I've ever once mentioned to them, why don't you apply to the OU? Why is that? Is there something that I feel that they might not be accepted? Is that why I haven't said that? Is that my subconscious level working on me there? I don't know, but that's an issue I think needs, has to be addressed because we need that diversity. And that's the last point. The staff of the OU should reflect a diverse society. And at the minute, that's not the case. Okay, a greater need, understanding of our cultural differences. There has to be a need to recognize the needs of students and to put students first. Those are challenges that in the post that some ALs were making, it wasn't clear that some of the ALs were putting the needs of the students first. It wasn't clear that that's what they were doing. We do need to understand the ethnicity of our students. Positive discrimination towards students from a BAME background was suggested when decided to. So, for example, I think an AL said that they don't have any tutorials on a Friday because this was, I think, really linked more to religion. That was stopping the Muslims in their tutorial groups from attending their tutorials. So they shifted that from Friday into other weekdays. So things like that were being shared across the forum as well. Okay, there is that need to discuss race and ethnicity with students and for the potential for issues to impact on their studies. That needs to be addressed. The views of the colleagues and students from the BAME background need to be heard and acted upon. It's not just enough to hear the plethora of just white people's voices. It needs to be more diverse. The need for the associate lecturer and support professional development team to focus on the APP and the importance of race and ethnicity at the OU. And this should include issues such as being valued, being included and representation, as well as having an inclusive curriculum. Okay, so this is the breakdown of the ALs, okay, from that statistics in terms of the faculty. So you got FAS, FBL, STEMA, and WELS. And as you can see the total of ALs in the middle and then the percentage below. The FBL faculty has a very high percentage, but again, they have a very low number of ALs. So you can just see the disparity in terms of the number of BAME ALs across the board. You can just see the disparity there. So, final thoughts. What started off as a thread to find out what the views were, okay, of the OU ALs in relation to discussion about race descended into an unsafe space, which resulted in ALs from a BAME background removing themselves from the forum. But then I'll go back to the quote I said that I wanted to pull out. But there was that one quote: we haven't done well enough, we need to do better. And that gave me hope. I'm not naive to say that everything's going to change today or tomorrow in the next year, but that did give me hope that we are moving in the right direction. People were countering and challenging posts when they could. But yes, that's, I didn't expect this to happen. That was not how I felt, or that's not how I saw the thread going through from its start to the finish. That was not, I did not perceive that the posts that were there is what I would have seen. That wasn't my perception at all. But again, I'll go to that quote. We haven't done well enough. We need to do better. Okay, and on that note, thank you very much.